Good evening. I call the October 22nd, 2024 regular board meeting of the Richland District 2 School Board of Trustees to order. The agenda for tonight's meeting has been published and made available. May I please have a motion regarding the approval of the agenda?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Agostini.
I move to approve the October 22nd, 2024 regular board meeting
The
agenda.
motion has been made by Mrs. Agostini. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Agostini and seconded by Mr. Trapp to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Board members, please vote. Ms. Ashley is on the hand vote. And Ms. Nash will give a hand vote. Is that a yes? Ms. Nash, the vote is 7 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move to item 3.1, executive session. May I have a motion to go into executive session?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mrs. McFadden.
Yes, ma'am. I move to convene an executive session for the purpose of discussing a parent appeal, receipt of legal advice regarding a board matter, student appeals, student admission requests into the district adult education program, breach of contracts, and employment recommendations and certified releases.
The motion has been made by Mrs. McFadden and second. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. McFadden and seconded by Mrs. Agostini to go into executive session. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, board members, please vote. And Mrs. Nash will do a hand vote. You're in now? Okay. The motion is 7 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. The board will now enter into executive session.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mrs.
Adjourn.
Yes, we're adjourned. That's why I told you you can't do that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm going to be going. I have my son's getting a commander's call tonight. It starts at 6:30, so I'm going to leave, and hopefully I'll be back after that. So if I'm not here, that's where I'm at. And it's his birthday tonight, so please excuse me. Thank you.
May I have a motion to end executive session?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Agostini.
I move that we concluded executive session or adjourned executive session at 6:48 p.m. and that we reconvene in general session.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Agostini and seconded by Mr. Trapp to end executive session at 6:48 and to resume public session. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Board members, please vote. While we're waiting on the vote, Mrs. McFadden had an engagement tonight, but she will join us later on this evening. The motion is 6 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move to inspirational moment. And I am so excited about this. I'm going to read the bio of our speaker, and then later I'll share something else. Our speaker this evening for Inspirational Moment is Jamie Hill. Jamie is a 6-year-old author, kindness advocate, and founder of the Kids Kindness Club. In Jamie's book, Good Manners, Good People, Jamie explores how practicing good manners can positively impact individuals and foster a more compassionate society. Did you hear what I said? I said she's 6 years old. She is a first grade student who excels in basketball, t-ball, and soccer. In her free time, Jamie, okay. She loves reading. Y'all, she's a superstar, so she has to make free time. She loves reading, spending time with her cousins, singing, playing board games with her mom and dad on family night, and taking fun walks with her two beloved dogs, Deuce and Bo. Jamie passionately believes that kids can lead the way by promoting good manners, kindness, and respect. She hopes to empower her readers to become leaders in promoting kindness and good manners in their communities and beyond. As Jamie says, let's make manners and kindness fun. Before Jamie comes up, we're going to hear from Jamie's grandmother, Dr. Angela Carr Patterson, and she's going to share some words, and then we're going to have Miss Superstar, Jamie Hill, comes up next. Dr. Patterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, officers, and board members. Thank you for having us and having my little superstar here, Jamie Hill. I was speaking with Dr. Ekins Scott and sharing with her that Jamie and I had a conversation about writing a book. And I said, Jamie, what do you want to talk about? And she said, kindness. And I'm a grandmother, and I've kept Jamie since she was, a few weeks old. And Jamie is a kind kid. And I'm not saying that because she's my granddaughter, but she came here just a very kind, sweet spirit. She was the promised child. We prayed for her, and she was the promised child. And she carries this kindness and this love everywhere she goes. So it comes natural to her, and she wants people to be kind. So we are going to spread the message of kindness around the nation. We believe that our country has become pretty depleted when it comes to kindness. And the Bible says that a child should lead them. And we're going to rev up a movement of children to teach us adults what it means to be kind in the world. And so we want the schools to get aboard, the churches, the communities, because we believe that a child can lead them and that kindness is the answer. Jamie has found her purpose. I believe that we don't have a crisis of behavior. We have an identity crisis, but when you answer these 3 questions, who am I, why am I here, and what am I here to do? That means you know who you are, you have an identity. You know why you're here, you have a purpose, and you know what you're here to do, you have a vision. When a child has purpose, identity, and vision, they are unstoppable, and they become attributes and an asset to this community and to the world. I am a parent of 5 graduates of District 2. A granddaughter has graduated from District 2, and now I have 3 grandchildren in District 2, and I am proud that we are part of this community. Thank you, and we're going to hear from our baby. Wait a minute. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, everyone, for having me. Thank you for your good manners from Jamie Hill. In every word, in every smile, and how we listen, how we're heard, manners make us shine so bright. Let's be polite and respectful and kind, for good manners make hearts entwine. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
But that is not all. People who know me know that I love to shop first, and I love a great book. And my colleagues know I don't do a whole lot without issuing a book to them. So Ms. Jamie Hill has provided books for us tonight, and she has also autographed the book. And if there are any educators in here, did you hear that reading? I'm a former first grade teacher. I am so proud of you. The teachers, raise your hand, teachers in here. Aren't you proud of Jamie and her reading? And we've been talking about that. So, Ms. Jamie, would you like to come and share your book that you have for each board member? Because we're so excited to shake your hand and to receive our book. Board members, let's just go to the front so she doesn't have to walk back here. Once again, thank you so much for being here, and we do want to apologize for our tardiness. We had so much going on, and anytime we're dealing with families, students, and kids, we want to make sure that we take time to appreciate your opportunity for meeting with us and being able to make a sound decision on anything that we do. So with that being said, we're going to move to 5.1, special recognitions. The agenda item in this session is special recognitions of Richland School District 2 students, staff, and schools. Dr. Moore, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will ask Ms. Darcy Rush, our Senior Chief of Communications, to come to the podium to present to the board.
I appreciate the offer.
And as Ms. Rush gets to the podium and doesn't need the stool,
Right.
I would ask board members to please join us at the front.
Oh, just a little bit taller. We're super excited this evening to recognize some incredible students, and these recognitions are near and dear to my heart as a journalist. So I'll begin by saying good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Dr. Moore. Tonight's recognitions begin with a student award. Richland Northeast High School senior and Cavplex Convergence Media Sports Editor Delaney Peck. Delaney, if you'll come forward, please. Delaney received a Best of SNO School Newspaper Online distinction, yeah, right there, for her thoughtful commentary about gun violence in response to the Appalachia school shooting in September. This national recognition showcases the best student journalism from members of the SNO network. Only about 15% of submissions are selected for publication and distinction. Engaging writing, unique angles, and multimedia elements were some of the factors considered in selecting Delaney's work for this recognition. You can find her story on the Best of SNO website or on the SABR, the online news program of Richland Northeast High School. Let's give her a round of applause. Let's get a picture with the right one. Yeah. We don't want anybody to zoom in. Right. Oh, she got the wrong one. Yeah. Now let's get her. Yes. Thank you for noticing that. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Lillian Mirosavich, also a senior at Richland Northeast, was chosen as a 2024 Free Spirit Scholar. Lillian, will you come forward? All righty. Placing her among 50 of the brightest high school journalists in the country, she received an all-expense-paid week of educational programming and mentorship this past summer in Washington, D.C. Lillian was the only high school journalism student from South Carolina selected for this national honor, which also comes with a $1,000 scholarship to the college of her choice. Let's give Lillian a huge round of applause. And if you were wondering if the next student wasn't from Richland Northeast, the next student is from Richland Northeast. Congratulations to Journey Schofield for earning College Board national recognition for outstanding academic achievement. The College Board National Recognition Program honors students annually who belong to communities historically underrepresented on college campuses. Journey is a junior at Richland Northeast High School. Thank you. And up next, the South Carolina Council of Teachers of Mathematics is recognizing Brandy Cade as a Leadership Fellow. Brandy? Ms. Cade is a second grade teacher at the Center for Inquiry. She is one of about 20 educators selected as a Leadership Fellow. In the Fellows Program, Ms. Cade will learn leadership skills and about leadership opportunities in mathematics. After she completes her final training session next month, she will then be recognized at the State Math Conference in Columbia and transition into the role of ambassador, serving as a liaison to share math issues with others involved in the organization. Let's give Ms. Cade another huge round of applause. Again, please join me in giving all of our honorees a round of applause. These awards and recognitions all highlight our core values of joy, learning, belonging, and continuous improvement. Let's give them a round of applause. And before we take our seats this evening, we have to pause for just a moment and recognize one of our board members. This is the last regularly scheduled board meeting, I should say, for Ms. Lindsay Agostini. Let's give her a round of applause. So, a little bit about Ms. Agostini. She was first elected to the Richland 2 Board of Trustees in November of 2016. She is a native of Michigan and a graduate of Indiana University. She served as board chair from November of 2022 through June of 23. She is a current member of the Spring Valley Educational Foundation and former member of the Spring Valley High School School Improvement Council. Ms. Agostini was a founding member of the TLC Education Foundation. She's an avid athlete and has competed at the national level in both swimming and triathlon events. And what I learned today is if you know someone who knows how to swim, she probably taught them. Mrs. Agostini and her husband are the proud parents of 3 Richland 2 graduates, and we do have a small token of our appreciation for your years of service, and Dr. Moore is going to present that to you. This is the last time you have to smile for Marcus. Mr. Agostini, if you would come forward. Yes. Thank you.
Give you an opportunity to share some words.
Well, right now, I have words for at the end, but I just
Okay.
I was taking a point of privilege. Thank you for recognizing my husband. I was going to introduce him after, but this is my husband, Jim Agostini, who's listened to me for 8 years about school board. And next to him, I want to recognize my dear friend, Susan Brill. And Susan is a former trustee, but for those that don't know, Susan was the one that called and asked me to run for school board, and then publicly announced, without my consent, that in fact I was running for school board. And she's been a great mentor and friend, and just thank you all so much for coming this evening.
Thank you for those words, Mrs. Agostini, because I was also going to recognize Mrs. Susan Brill as one of our board members. And Susan has been a mentor to so many of us. We have learned so much. And when I think about Jamie's book, Mrs. Brill is the epitome of kindness, good people, love, respect. So, Mrs. Brill, thank you for being here, and just thank you for your leadership, mentoring, and thank you for listening to me as well and giving us advice. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you. We're going to move now to item 6.1, consent agenda. We will now move to 6.1. May I please have a motion regarding the approval of the consent agenda?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Nash?
I move to approve the consent agenda for the October 22nd, 2024 regular board meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Nash, seconded by Mrs. Washington. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Board members, please vote. The motion is 6 yes, 0 no. The vote is 6 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We'll give them a minute to walk out. Yes. Oh, here it is. We will now go to item 7.1, public participation. We have 2 individuals who have signed up to address the board. You will be given 3 minutes to address the board. To assist with timing, the lights on the table in front of me will change colors from green to yellow to red. When you have 30 seconds remaining, the light will turn yellow. When the time is up, the light will turn red, and you will hear the tone indicating your time to speak has expired. Before we begin, I will remind you that our meetings are streamed live and recorded. According to policy BEDH, comments from the public should not include gossip, defamatory words, or abusive and vulgar language. The policy also prohibits in public session any expression of personal complaints about individual school personnel or any other person connected with the school system. Specific student or personnel issues should be handled through the appropriate procedures as indicated in the district policy. Questions asked during public participation typically will be referred to a staff member for a response at a later time. We will now start with our first public participation, and that is Jordan Benjamin.
Hello, Madam Chair, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board. My name is Jordan Benjamin, and I am currently a senior at Spring Valley High School. I'm here to speak on behalf of my fellow students on the state's new Free to Focus policy that is on the agenda tonight. This policy addresses new regulations on the usage of phones during school hours. While the policy is very specific to its ideas, it allows our school districts to decide on the use of phones on school buses and at athletic events and field trips. Me and my peers, many who cannot be with me here tonight, urge the board to rule against any prohibitions regarding these three specifications. We believe that they pose numerous safety issues and would decrease the amount of student participation if so highly promoted. We would also like to note that we understand that phones can be a distraction, but we believe that there is a better way to achieve this goal without potentially putting student safety in jeopardy. In Part 2A of the Policy Implementation and Endorsement section, it gives the school board discretion. We're asking that instead of the regulations being no phones at all, that it rather runs on a bell-to-bell schedule, as you may see with our dress code policy. We'd also like to urge the school board to allow for phones to be stored in students' backpacks, as it is given to you to decide on in the policy. At the end of the model policy, it states that superintendents and applicable personnel will be sent a survey seeking input on what has worked and what can be worked on no later than April 30th, 2025. We would like to push for the district to listen to students' opinions when the survey is administered. Specifically, we'd like to push for the changing regulations to be more inclusive of students who have gap periods and students in study hall. Many of my peers who I have talked with were not able to be here tonight due to after-school activities and sports, but I'm here as a representative of them all. We hope that you take our suggestions into consideration and vote in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Next, we will have Rhonda Meisner. Rhonda here? I don't believe Rhonda is here, so we will continue on. We will move to item 8.0, voting on executive session items. We will start with 8.1, parent appeal. May I please have a motion regarding the parent appeal?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Washington?
I move that we postpone the decision for the parent appeal until the November 2024 board meeting.
The motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Washington and seconded by Mrs. Nash. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Board members, please vote. Ms. Washington, please check the motion.
It should be the November 2024 board meeting.
Ms. Washington, please check the motion again. Mrs. Nash. Board members, please vote. The vote is 6 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move to item 8.2, student appeals. May I please have a motion regarding student appeals?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Nash, Mrs. Washington.
Porter.
Ms. Porter, oh my goodness, Mrs. Porter.
You're fine. I move to deny the appeal for student number 1.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Porter to deny the appeal. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Porter, seconded by Mrs. Nash. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, board members, please vote. The motion is 5 yes, 1 no. The motion passes. May I please have a motion regarding student number 2?
Madam Chair, I move to deny the appeal for student number 2.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Porter. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Porter, seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Mrs. Porter, check your motion, please. Board members, please vote. The motion is 6 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move to item 8.3, student admission request into the district's adult education program. May I please have a motion?
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Washington.
I move to approve the student admission request into the district's adult education program for student number 1.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Washington. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Washington and seconded by Mrs. Nash. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Please check the motion, Mrs. Washington. Board members, please vote. The motion is 6 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move to item 8.4, breach of contracts. May I please have a motion regarding the breach of contracts?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Trapp.
I move that we direct the administration to file a formal complaint to the State Board of Education regarding employee number 1 who breached their employment contract with the district.
The motion has been made by Mr. Trapp. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mr. Trapp and seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Board members, please vote. The motion is 6 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. May I please have a motion regarding the breach of contract for teacher number 2?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Trapp?
I move that we direct the administration to file a formal complaint to the State Board of Education regarding employee number 2 who breached their employment contract with the district.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mr. Trapp and seconded by Mrs. Nash. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Mr. Trapp, please check the motion.
That is correct.
Okay, board members, please vote. The motion is 6 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. May I please have a motion regarding the breach of contract for employee number 3?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Trapp?
I move that we direct the administration to file a formal complaint to the State Board of Education regarding employee number 3 who breached their employment contract with the district.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mr. Trapp and seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Mr. Trapp, please check the motion.
That is correct.
Board members, please vote. The motion is 6 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. May I please have a motion regarding the breach of contract for employee number 4?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Trapp?
I move that we direct the administration to file a formal complaint to the State Board of Education regarding employee number 4 who breached their employment contract with the district.
The motion has been made by Mr. Trapp. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mr. Trapp and seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Mr. Trapp, please check the motion.
It is correct.
Board members, please vote. The vote is 5 yes, 1 no. The motion passes. We will now move to item 8.5, employee recommendations and certified releases. May I please have a motion regarding employment recommendations and certified releases?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Agostini?
I move to approve the employment recommendations and certified releases as presented.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Agostini. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Agostini and seconded by Mrs. Washington. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Mrs. Agostini, please check the motion.
That is correct.
Board members, please vote. The motion is 6 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move to item 9.0, new business action requested. Policy 9.1, policy revision, policy BID, board member compensation and expenses. Oh, The agenda item in this session is a policy revision regarding policy BID, board member compensation and expenses. May I please have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Nash?
I move to approve the policy revisions to policy BID, board member compensation and expenses as presented.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Nash. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Nash and seconded by Mrs. Washington. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Agostini?
I just did want to point out to the public, while this is listed under new business, action requested, this is actually old business action requested, because this is the second reading, and our policy does require that we go through and read the policy twice, and this is the second reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Agostini. I think that was an error on their part with new business under 9 and new business under 10. So thank you so much for that. If you would, please check the motion. Mrs. Nash?
That is correct.
Board members, please vote. The vote 6 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move to item 9.2, change of date for the November regular board meeting. This agenda item in this section is a change of date for the November 12th, 2024 regular board meeting. Per policy BBB, board membership and elections, the term of office of every elected trustee of the school district must commence 1 week following the certification of his or her election. Being that the new board members will be elected on November 5th and certification is expected on Friday, November 8th, we would need to change the date of our regular scheduled board meeting. May I please have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Porter?
I move that we change the date of the November 12th board meeting to November 15th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Porter, would you add the start time? Did you indicate the start time? 'Cause I don't see it.
Okay, I move that we change the November 12th board meeting to November 15th, beginning at 4:30 p.m.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Porter. Is there a second? And I know you seconded. She's not making a second. Lindsay, were you making a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Agostini and seconded by, Mrs. Porter. The motion has been made by Mrs. Porter and seconded by Mrs. Nash. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Nash.
I did notify y'all, but I may not be able to make that because it's my mom's birthday and I already paid for the trip and I don't want my mom to kill me, so I may or may not be here.
She just corrected the time. Mrs. Porter, if you could rescind your original 2 motions and start over for us, please.
I apologize. Madam Chair, may I please rescind the past 2 motions?
Yes, Thank you.
Okay.
Now, Mrs. Porter, your
try again.
motion?
Okay, I move to reschedule the November 12th regular board meeting for Friday, November 15th, 2024, and to authorize the board chair and superintendent the flexibility to select an alternate date in the event the certification of election results extends beyond November 8th, 2024. Hold on a second, I'm sorry. I probably need to put the start time. Okay, I move to reschedule the November 12th regular board meeting for Friday, November 15th, 2024 at 4:30 PM, and to authorize the board chair and superintendent the flexibility to select an alternate date in the event the certification of election results extends beyond November 8th, 2024.
Thank you, Mrs. Porter. The motion has been made by Mrs. Porter. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Porter and seconded by Mrs. Nash. Is there any discussion?
Just what I said before.
Board members, any discussion? Mrs. Porter, please check your motion.
That is correct.
Board members, please vote. The motion is 5 yes, 1 no. The motion passes. We will now move to item 9.3, cancellation of November 19th, 2024 board workshop. The agenda item in this session is a request for a cancellation of the November 19th, 2024 board workshop. May I please have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Nash.
I move to cancel the November 19th, 2024 board workshop.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Nash. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Nash, seconded by Mrs. Porter. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Please check the motion. Mrs. Nash?
That is correct.
Board members, please vote. The motion is 5 yes, 1 abstention, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move to 10.0, new business, no action requested. 10.1, policy revision proposal. Dr. Moore, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will ask our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Marshalyn Franklin, to present the policy revision for Policy JICJ to the board.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Madam Chair, members of the board, during the 2024 legislative session, the General Assembly enacted a budget proviso that prohibits students effective January 2025 from accessing personal electronic communication devices during the school day. The intent of this prohibition is to help ensure students are focused and engaged during the school day and not distracted by personal electronic communication devices. The draft policy presented this evening is the model policy developed by the State Board of Education. For the purpose of this policy, the school day begins with the tardy bell of the first class and ends with the dismissal bell of the last class. Please note that the school day prohibition is set in stone by the legislature and is not at the board's discretion to alter it. The model policy, however, does have 4 components that are at the board's discretion. These components have been reviewed with our advisory groups for input to include our student leaders, the teacher forum, principals, and parent advisory council. I will review each component and share the district administration's recommendations for the component. So if you will look in the definitions section, item C, where it says school day, districts have the flexibility to prohibit personal electronic devices on school buses, on field trips, and during athletic events. It is the recommendation of district administration to not extend the prohibition to these settings. In the definitions section, item E, authorized for classroom use. Districts may designate someone other than the superintendent to authorize a personal device for classroom use. It is district administration's recommendation to identify principals as the superintendent's designee. So for example, there are times when the superintendent may authorize a device for instructional or classroom use. For the example, earbuds is on the school supply list. And so earbuds, when used with the Chromebook for instructional purposes, could be designated by the superintendent as authorized for classroom use. An example of one that may be done at the school level, if there's a student who declines a district-issued Chromebook and brings their personal device, if we have the principal as the designee, the principal could authorize the student to use their personal device instead of accepting a district Chromebook. In section 2, policy implementation and enforcement, item A, districts may outright prohibit personal devices and accessories on school property. The feedback from our advisory groups, actually all of them, was that the policy as it is restrictive enough, and they recommended that we do not prohibit personal devices and accessories on school property. And the last area over which school boards have some flexibility is in section 2, policy implementation and enforcement, item D. Districts may choose the contents of its progressive consequences plan, and so our recommendation is to outline the progressive consequences in an administrative rule. And so you have a second document in board docs that is a proposed administrative rule to the policy. If we can pull that up, Mr. Tony. All right, so in the section labeled consequences, it is district administration recommendation that these are the 4, or this is the progression of consequences for violation of the policy, which ranges from redirection to refusal to obey / defiance. And I will note that the greatest reservation from teachers about confiscating devices is assuming responsibility for the devices. They were loud and clear on that one. And so, particularly since students shouldn't have the devices, have access to the devices anyway. So if a teacher is placed in a position where he or she needs to confiscate a device, it is district recommendation that the board, employees, the school district assume no responsibility for theft, loss, or damages to students' personal electronic devices, including devices that are confiscated because of a student's violation of the policy and administrative rule. So you'll note that in the paragraph under the list of offenses and consequences. And in the bottom portion of the administrative rule, which reads procedure for addressing cell phones and other electronic communications devices during state-mandated testing, is a description of how we handle personal electronic devices in a testing environment, which is completely separate from the regular school day. Dr. Moore, that concludes the presentation of the policy, or proposed policy revision and administrative rule.
Thank you, Dr. Franklin. I just want to make a point of clarification, not just for the board, but for our audience. When this policy goes into effect, it not only covers cell phones, it's any device that can connect to the Wi-Fi. So if you have a smart watch, you have AirPods, you have Beats headphones, any device that connects to Wi-Fi would not be permitted from the beginning bell to the end of the bell. Students would need to have those devices turned off and out of sight. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. Oh, one other thing, board members. Failure for us to comply with this policy will result in us losing 25% of our funding. we cannot afford that.
Board members, are there any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Porter?
I just wanted to ask if there's any discussion about, there's a form that we currently have for those who choose not to use our Chromebooks, and if they wanted to use their own personal device, the parent signs off on it. I want to just make sure that we've thought about that and making sure that there's no, anything written in the student handbook or anything like that of that particular form, because that particular form would go against this policy.
We would need to update the form once the policy is approved by the board, and that is why the designee needs to be the principal at the school as the person responsible for ensuring that the student's new device, personal device, is in compliance with what the policy says.
And another question that I have is, we currently offer insurance for devices, and we also have a deadline in which insurance should be paid for to cover those devices. With this policy in place, there is no other option for students to use. I would suggest that the insurance cost would be included in student fees automatically, and somehow so that no one misses that opportunity with this hard deadline of September 30th to pay. But if there's something else that we can do to ensure that all students are covered by this insurance policy, not if you submit $30 by this date. I don't know if there's anything we could do to go around that.
And we can definitely look at that, Ms. Porter, for next year, if this proviso is put back in place next year. Currently, this is a proviso for this one, it's a one-year proviso, and the legislative body can elect to have it continue to next year, but at this point, it is for this year.
Okay, I just want to clarify that the technology insurance that you're referring to is not for students' personal devices. They're for district-owned and issued devices. Okay, I didn't want there to be people to think that when you mentioned insurance, it was for a student's personal cell phone or their personal laptop.
No, it's for our school devices.
Correct. Yeah.
However, we have some students now who may not be covered if they didn't pay the amount for the insurance by a certain deadline. Being that you don't have any other option, and that can be costly. So once you damage your device once, okay, you get a freebie because you've paid for the insurance.
Correct.
After that, it could be hundreds of dollars. But so with that being said, knowing that all students will be using devices, they don't have any other option, I feel like that insurance should be a no-brainer, and we not even offer it as a, you have to pay by this deadline. It'd be something that all students are covered. It's a part of your
Can you clarify what you mean
fees.
by they don't have any other option?
Meaning that they can't bring a personal device to school?
No, they can, and the principal has the authority to designate it as authorized for classroom use.
Okay, with the personal device?
Yes.
Okay, and so would that mean that they would still have to complete that form that says that?
To get approval for
To
the
get
device to be
approval
used
for
for classroom use.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. But they would still need their student device all year round. That's not saying that they're going to use their personal device every time they have permission. Outside of that permission, if they use the student device for other purposes, on a regular basis, because that student may come in for a specific reason, want to use their personal device, and they get approval, but every other day it's their Chromebook. Because that device, it could be anything. If you need special approval to use a tablet for a specific activity, but we're talking about their Chromebooks.
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Okay. Okay, well, never mind.
Ms. Porter, you sure you don't want to clarify anymore?
Well, the fact that they can bring, I thought they wouldn't be allowed to bring it, so that kind of changes things a little bit. You're saying that if they get permission first, they can bring in their personal device, but that's a lot, like on a regular basis. Are we gonna put the principal in that position where they
think
could have to approve something?
And I'll use my child as an example. So if she damages the Chromebook once and it's repaired, we use the insurance for it. If she loses it or damages it again, and I, as a parent, decide we're going to be done with Richland 2 devices, I'm going to ask for permission for you to just bring your own device. And so she wouldn't get a Chromebook again.
Okay.
She would just bring her personal device every day.
And that's something that is likely to get approved?
Yes, we have that now. We have students that
Okay.
decline the Richland 2 Chromebook, and they bring their personal device.
Okay, then.
Yeah, for classroom use.
Board members, any other questions?
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Trapp?
I do have one question.
Yes.
I know we mentioned earlier smartwatches and specifically Wi-Fi. Smartwatches that are only Bluetooth compatible, is that going to be a whole separate thing? Is Bluetooth technology something that this policy covers at all, or is it simply Wi-Fi when it comes to things like smartwatches?
So the policy specifically addresses devices that can connect to the internet.
Board members, any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mrs. Washington?
So I'm looking at this policy, the model policy, and I know that it's tied to Proviso 1.103, but I also know that we currently have our own policy for possession and use of electronic communication devices in schools. And I note that there is a slight difference, but my question is, who's going to enforce this? Because teachers have been talking about this policy for years. And if this proviso goes away at the end of the school year, what does the enforcement look like for this policy? Because this is already something that we have already in place.
The enforcement would be for the teacher to follow the guidelines that we've proposed here. So do redirection, and then if the student does not comply, then to move up through the progressive discipline plan.
I guess
And if the proviso is not put in place again for next year, then we will bring back to the board a policy that would address whatever the new rules are that would apply. And I don't have an answer to what the new rules would be at this particular point. Because we have a policy.
It's laid out there. The
Right.
same thing, first offense, confiscate device and return to student by the end of the day. Second offense, confiscate device and return to student parent. This language is very similar. And what I'm saying is that we already had a policy in place, but it hasn't been enforced. And so now we're just adding some additional language and a proviso in here, but we already have the policy, and that's my question.
And what I would say, Ms. Washington, is the policy has been enforced. Maybe not as consistent as we would want in every classroom, but I can tell you from visits in schools, and I'll give you a specific example. A classroom I went into at Westwood High School, second-year teacher, I asked the teacher, talk to me about cell phones and issues you have in your classroom. And she said, I don't have issues, Dr. Moore, because I have a procedure. She had the pockets that elementary schools use. She said, I talked to my class and we set our norms. The class agreed. The first 2 or 3 days, it was about 80% of her students. And she said by the end of the first full week, it was all of her students. So the lack of consistency is a challenge, but we're hoping that as our teachers are enforcing this rule, combined with our students understanding that this is not optional, this is the law for this year, that will also have a significant impact. When I met with our student advisory group, and I'm so excited that Jordan came and spoke tonight and advocated for what they wanted, I reminded them that this is not just a teacher issue, this is a student issue as well as a parent issue, because parents have concerns. So what we have done is asked the students to come up with their communication plan that they would like to share at their school, because each school is different. So they're working with our communications department, and we're just going to work through this process. But as I explained to the students, this is not optional. This is the law, and 25% of the budget, if we are not in compliance with the law, is what the penalty is to the district. Therefore, we will have to figure out the best way for this to work, given the fact that each teacher is responsible for their classroom and should have a classroom management plan that they are implementing.
Are there any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Agostini?
I have two questions. I'm seeking clarity. First of all, it's on the administrative rule and consequences. The fourth offense, refusal to obey defiance. The other three offenses are pretty self-explanatory. So I'm looking for understanding on what the refusal to obey defiance means in terms of consequence.
That would be ISS, in-school suspension. It could be out-of-school suspension if it's a continuing issue. It would be treated at that point like any level 1 offense.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing that question, would be the third paragraph under consequences. Students' personal electronic devices in district custody will not be searched or otherwise tampered with unless school officials reasonably suspect that the search is required to discover evidence of a violation of the law or other school rules. So I would like clarification on when we can legally search these students' phones. That's permissible.
When there is reasonable suspicion, like any other search, when we have reasonable suspicion that the student may have something illegal on them or may have done something, we can search that student, we can search their device when it's reasonable suspicion. That is separate or different from law enforcement, which is a different standard for a law enforcement officer. So that search would be conducted by an administrator unless we know that it is a legal issue in which law enforcement would then get involved in.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Board members, are there any other questions? I do have a question, and I think, Dr. Moore, you almost touched on this. I know we had an opportunity to attend an event, and someone shared with us about the lock security case that they had in a neighboring school district, that students had a procedure that when they walked in, they placed their phones. In this case, the teacher locked it, and at the end of the day, he unlocked it, and they went on. I guess my concern with that is, one, that takes away time from students, because that's going to take time from their learning opportunity to come in, wait in a line, place your device in there, and then we're also going to take time at the end of the period, because if we plan to do that, to make sure that students are not tardy going to the next class, we're also taking away learning, because that may take another 10, 15 minutes depending on the age group. So what plans do we actually have in place for teachers to secure and lock these phones, since we are requiring teachers to do that? And then also with that, a second part to that question, are we going to provide the lock case for these devices?
So, Madam Chair, we did research the lock boxes as well as the bags that students can put devices in. In discussion with our colleagues in other districts and our research, first off, the bag is a magnetic bag. You can take that bag, hit it against the wall, and the bag will open. It's a magnet, and so that's one of the concerns. In addition to that, the cost would have been close to $500,000 for us to purchase enough bags to secure phones for every student in this district. That's the first one that we looked at. We also looked at the lock boxes. The problem with the lock boxes, it works very well in small districts. Students come in at the beginning of the day, put that phone in there, and then at the end of the day, not every period, they go and get their phone at the end of the day. Once again, a cost associated with that, as well as the impact on instructional time if we were to try to do that every period in a high school, for example. In elementary school, students can put their phone in their backpacks, hang them up in the cubbies like they normally do, not an issue. We do have some middle schools that have already implemented this policy, and it's working just fine. The challenge has been, of course, with high school and students moving. We had a very robust discussion at our superintendent meeting around this policy, but it is a law, and we have to comply with the law. And from our perspective, the best solution is to, one, trust and empower our students, because the vast majority of them do the right thing, and address the behavior of those that do not. And that's why you see that caveat that Dr. Franklin talked about. The district is not responsible for the device, because the student is supposed to keep that device off and out of sight. If they make a poor choice, there's consequences attached to that, and it is their choice.
My second question is, we know that there are some middle schools that do not provide lockers.
Mhm.
So talk to us about how we're going to provide for those students that don't have a locker, because we don't offer that for middle school students in some of the schools.
Yes, we have schools that lockers were removed or built without lockers. We actually have high schools that have a limited number of lockers. So students may store their device in their backpack, in their purse, in their pocket, but it has to be out of sight and cannot be on.
Thank you. Board members, are there any other questions? Seeing no more questions, we will move forward to thank you, Dr. Franklin, to item 10.2, Human Resources Report, Guest Teacher Services. This agenda item in this session is a Human Resources Report regarding guest teacher services. Dr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to call up to the podium Dr. Adams, who is LaToya Adams, our Executive Director for Human Resources, to present to the board. She will be accompanied by our team from ESS.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Superintendent Dr. Moore, and constituents in the audience. This evening, I have the pleasure of introducing our ESS partners. They are Jessica Davis, Senior Regional Manager, Courtney Robinson, Regional Manager, Travis Damon, Account Manager, who could not be here this evening, and our District Support, Lori Lewis, Director of Employment Services. Before they begin, I want you to imagine that you are a teacher in a school of 100 faculty and staff members, and today, 42 of your colleagues did not come to work. What does that look like for you? How are you going to help cover classes? What about your lesson plans that you planned for today? In the year 2023-2024, our overall fill rate was 54%. We had 371 guest teachers. This evening, our ESS partnership team will provide an overview of our first quarter.
Hello, it's a pleasure being here with you all today. My name is Courtney Robinson. I am the Regional Manager for the state of South Carolina with ESS. My role here in Richland, too, is the District Manager. So I oversee your guest teachers, and I'm also the point of contact for your campus users and also your principals. I'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. What I'm going to go over will be the numbers for the first quarter. That's August 7th through October 9th. Next slide, please. Here you have your key measurements. The numbers that you see in front of you are going to show the amount of absences we were able to fill and those that we were able to unfill, okay? We ended the first quarter with a 78%. That 78% is going to include those absences for your teachers, your paraprofessionals, and also those child development positions that we cover. Again, looking at the numbers, these are going to be actual teachers that are in the schools and also vacancies, okay? Our key measurements and results. This is my favorite slide. This is my favorite slide because it's going to show you the amount of absences we're able to fill when we have a 12-hour lead time. When we have a 12-hour lead time, we're filling those absences. We're filling absences at a 94%. Tomorrow, we have 178 absences already in the system, and we're at a 97%. Now, if we look over in our line chart here, you'll see that when we have those absences that occur between that 0 and 12-hour lead time, when we have that teacher that has the pink eye, or the hamster is sick, whatever the case may be, those absences, we're having a little bit of trouble filling those absences. But again, looking in the system right now, we have 178 that are filled. We know it's going to happen in the morning, but we are making treadway with getting those filled. Next slide, please. Our next slide, you're going to see the absence reasons. Again, I believe this is on the docket where you all can see that, so I won't go into more in depth into the presentation. However, the numbers are going to show you the absence reasons that we're seeing in the system. Yes, the number is high, but we are filling those absences. Next slide, please. Our next slide is, all of the slides are my favorite. However, this slide is going to show you the amount of absences we have in the system for August, September, and October. Looking at October, remember, the data that I pulled within the system was only from October 1st through October 9th, that first quarter, and we were at an 85%. I'm happy to tell you all, we are still at an 85%. Looking at the numbers from last year, for the month of October, the district had 4,272 requests. Teacher, paraprofessional requests, 4,272. That had you all at 55%. As of today, we've received 4,600 requests. So we've received more requests and we're still at an 85%. Again, on the presentation, you can see the days of the week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, Mondays and Fridays are like our kryptonite. We're always getting absences on Mondays and Fridays. However, I love numbers. However, looking at the numbers, Wednesday is a professional development day. We get professional development days on Wednesdays. It's your principal's favorite day. We fill more absences on Wednesday than we do on Friday. Okay, next slide, please. The remaining slides are going to show you all of the positions that we are able to fill and it's going to break it down by elementary school. And you can keep on sliding, please, sir. Elementary school, middle school, and high school. Something that, you can stop right there, please, sir. Something that I like about this particular slide, I included Blythewood Academy. Blythewood Academy is sitting at a 78%. 78%. Travis and I have worked with the campus users and also the guest teachers to build that guest teacher population at that school. That particular school was at a 38% last year. Our high schools are going to be the high schools. However, as you can see, when these schools have a guest teacher population that likes going to the school, they're comfortable with the school, they build that rapport, we are seeing the increase in fill rates. And a look at the numbers is going to be our next slide. We have, and this again was done at the first part of October. We have hired 517 guest teachers. That was on October 9th. We've hired 547 from 5 o'clock to this evening. But what we like to look at within the numbers, we like to look at the amount of requests you all receive. If I have a day with 200 requests, I need 600 guest teachers in my guest teacher pool to fill those absences. We're getting there because we're at an 85%, but we like to shoot for the 90s. We know we can do that. We're purpose-driven in Richland, too. We have, see how I did that? We have 212 district originals. Your district originals are going to be those guest teachers that previously worked with the district. And right now, as you can see, we're covering 59 vacancies and have 66 South Carolina certified teachers. We've attended numerous events recruiting for your guest teachers, and that's going to be on the next slide. We've partnered with SC Works. We've been to the USC Part-Time Job Fair. We've also been to Bethel Hanbury, Westwood High School, recruiting in their car lines. And the next slide is going to show you me in the field. I was there in the car line. It was hot, too. You'll see us in the car line passing out those recruitment information. And our next slide is going to talk about our partnership. Our basic goal is to recruit your guest teachers and continue with our check-ins to make sure we are purpose-driven for Richland too. We want to thank you for your partnership. And the last slide was if there was any questions.
Board members, are there any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Trapp?
I have a handful of questions. I'll try to be quick, though. I'm just curious about a couple of things. Do we still do half-day assignments and stuff like they did a couple years ago?
Yes,
So-
that is correct.
And I'm just curious, whenever we see, like, for example, 2 half-day assignments, would that be considered one assignment, or would that be 2 in our numbers? Does that make any sense?
2.
Okay. Oh, gosh, I had about 50 questions, but.
No, yes.
No, I know that the fill rate is absolutely incredible. I know the other thing I want to know. Do you guys reach out to people when you're in a bind? And the reason I ask that, I substitute taught. Back then it was different, but I enjoyed it for the most part. I mean, well, I'm a very grumpy guy. Y'all don't hold that against anybody. I mean, I loved elementary school. Middle school was okay. High school scared me. But anyway, so I usually did half-day assignments just because that worked better for me. But I had to go in other words, I just looked when I saw I had a half a day I could spend at school. Do you guys, when you're in a bind, do you have any way? Do you text or anything where you reach out to people that you might be able to coerce into coming in? When you have a bind, like you're talking about, teacher calls in that morning.
Right, yes.
Is there any way to do something other than just hope someone goes on the website and looks?
No, so we come up, the account manager for Richland 2, his name is Travis Damon. We have different strategies that we go through in regards to filling those last minute assignments. Even though we have 517 guest teachers, I know a little bit of something about everyone. I know that Miss Mary Trapp likes to go to Muller Road. I know that Miss Susan Jenkinson will like to go to Bethel Hanbury. So we ask them and we vet them to see where they would like to go. We also use the Remind app where we can send out a text message and saying, hey, we really need help today at Westwood High School. Are you able to help? Are you able to pick up an assignment? We will offer incentives with Chick-fil-A, Starbucks. They want it, they got it, to help fill those last minute assignments. I always tell my guest teachers, I will call you, text you, send a pigeon in the mail. Just don't come to my house because you'll have to keep the kids. We're going to get those assignments filled.
But we do not coerce.
Yes, no.
We welcome people.
Yes, with a smile.
Did I use a poor word there? I might have. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, that sounds wonderful. I really think that, and the numbers reflect that you're doing a real good job, it looks like.
Thank you.
Board members, any other questions? Mrs. Porter?
Yes. So I wanted to know if there's any other ways that you get feedback from your guest teachers aside. I see the numbers here, but are you getting any narratives and open responses about what would make their experience better?
Yes. So on our end, on the corporate level, we send out a first day and a 10-day survey, just so they can give us feedback in regards to how their day went. Not just in regards to the school, but also what I can do as an account manager if I wasn't as communicative with them, if they needed me and I was on a call and I didn't respond back to them. But we do send out first day and 10-day surveys to the guest teachers to receive their feedback. We also send out, and I know this wasn't a part of your question in regards to the guest teachers, something that I took the initiative to do since we are the new vendor. We reach out to the principals and the campus users and asking them for their feedback. What's working, what's not working? Let me know so I can fix it.
Okay. And is that information shared with our HR department?
Yes.
Okay. I would be remiss if I didn't share information or feedback. And so some things that, well, before I go there, working with principals, do you have open communication with principals? Sometimes they have preferences for guest teachers and build relationships. and may want certain teachers to be in place for a certain number of days if it's a long-term situation or somewhat long-term situation?
Right, correct.
Do you take that into account?
Yes.
Okay. Well, some feedback that I did receive was the strictness of the start time and end time. Some of our guest teachers have students also in Richland too, and have worked things out with the principal where they're okay with that guest teacher dropping off their children and being a couple of minutes late because of the distance from their child's school and the school that they're working. And if they're there for a long term, they might not end their shift at 2:15 as required. They might have stay longer because they're doing extra duties because they're in that classroom long term. They want to set up their classroom for the next day and so forth. But I've heard things such as they're not able to count that time, that they have to clock out by a certain time, and that if they're late and they clock in late after a certain amount of times, they're given correspondence saying that they could violate the policy and be dismissed and so forth. But if it's a guest teacher that's in good standing with that principal, and the principal has said, yes, it's okay that you have to go across town and drop off your child and you're a few minutes late, we have coverage for the class for that time. Are we taking that into consideration so that we don't burn those bridges with those guest teachers?
So yes, we do take that into consideration. One thing that I tell my guest teachers, and I also tell the principals and the campus users, accountability. Because they're going to hold me accountable for making sure their classrooms are filled, and I'm going to also hold their guest teachers accountable for making sure that they're there on time and they're also following the procedures that are put in place by the district. So in regards to their clocking in and out, we have a system that we use called WillSub Plus. We use the system WillSub Plus to track the guest teacher's time. So if there's a guest teacher that, let's just say 7:25 to 2:55 is the time that we have standard in the system for all of our guest teachers. If the guest teacher does not clock out at 2:55, it's going to automatically clock them out. Now, the gray area comes in because the guest teacher isn't compensated. They're not being compensated if they're there after 2:55. It's okay if they stay later. It's okay if they come in late. However, we just want to make sure that we reiterate it to them that they're not compensated. So there's no disciplinary action in regards to them coming in late if they've already established that with the school. We just want to make sure they understand anything after 2:55 is volunteer time and they're not being compensated because we pay them based off of a 7.5 hours. Jessica?
Yeah, and I'll add too, WillSub Plus, our time tracking system, is set up to send automatic reminders to the substitutes. So say a substitute is a long-term, that's a perfect example, and they show up at 6:55, it doesn't allow them to clock in just yet. Correct. The system's going to automatically send them a message that says, I noticed that you forgot to sign in. Because it's directly tied to their pay and making sure that they submit their time, that's why the system is going to send them those, so they will make sure that they sign in. But as long as they have communicated with either us or the principals, we kind of hold true whatever the principals are okay with as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Nash?
I just wanted to say, great hook at the beginning where you said imagine, and it was like I was in that where I was like, oh. And then great enthusiasm for the whole presentation. I appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mrs. Washington?
So you said this information, your surveys and your data you're sharing with HR, I do want to know, how are we utilizing this data to start to inform some of our practices in terms of climate and culture with our schools?
Okay, so when we have information sent back to us, what we do as an HR leadership team, we dissect the feedback amongst the directors and amongst the different divisions. And so what we want to do is make sure that we are being a present help. You know, customer service, we're putting that first. And we're making sure that that's one of our key things as one of our items. This is one of our goals, customer service. And so that's what we practice, and that's what we're practicing as directors, so we can make sure that we're bringing that out to the schools as well.
Board members, are there any other questions? Mrs. Porter?
Can you respond to the fact that, how are we recruiting our teachers? So those who are enrolled in this program, and they end up in a long-term situation, and then they want to participate in a program where they can be a more permanent educator. Is that allowed? Or is there something in our contract that does not allow that? Can you?
So yes, we do have a stipulation within our contract. So if there is a guest teacher that is in a long-term assignment, this guest teacher is what we call a district original. A district original is anyone that was a guest teacher during the 2023-2024 school term. The district does have the ability to hire that individual to go into a contract. However, and this is in our contract, the district is not able to hire any guest teacher that has not completed 90 assignments. If there is a guest teacher that is not a district original and they have not completed 90 assignments, the district does not have the ability to hire them. And myself, along with Travis Damon and Lori Lewis, we are working on a form to provide to the campus users and principals to make sure that we are abiding by the contract, because we do not want the district to inquire a fee. Does that answer your question?
Board members, any other questions? Well, I did have a few questions, but I think Mrs. Porter kind of hit on some of my questions. But I would like for you to go in more details, because I'm really concerned if the purpose is to make sure we fill these vacancies, and then we have a guest teacher, and then we're putting stipulations on 90 days. How are we benefiting from that? And then also, if you would share with us, what is the cost? Because if we have someone who's subbing guest teacher in math, and they've only been with us for 10 days, but then a math job vacancy opens, and we want to go ahead and get that person, what is the cost to the district? Because I have received a lot of feedback, and I think some of the board members have too, that they don't have the opportunity to move forward because the cost is too much. So if you can just elaborate on that for us, please.
Yes, so in regards to the cost, I believe, 2,500 is the fee if you all would like to hire a guest teacher for a vacancy. However, when we look at it at the grand scheme of things, because Jessica Davis, I hired Jessica Davis on Monday for a vacancy that they have at Bethel Hanbury. Jessica Davis does an amazing job. They want to hire her to go into that vacancy. She's only worked 3 days. However, I've put in the time and effort to run her background check, her TB test, reaching out to her, the time and effort that I've spent recruiting her, just wanting to make sure that, because this is a partnership, and we want to make sure we want the guest teachers to get hired. Believe me, I love the community. ESS in the community is dear to my heart. I want my guest teachers to have a fulfilling career in education. However, we have to do what's best for the company and the time and resources that Travis and I, our recruiter, have spent finding the guest teachers.
Thank you so much, because it was my understanding that that cost was much higher than 2,500. So that is a fact check, that is only 2,500?
Correct.
So it was misinformation that was shared to us. Exactly. My second question is, and I think this will probably be more to HR, Dr. Moore. Since we've hired this company, how much of savings have we saved with not using our staff that's already on point with us versus the company?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the savings cost, but I'll be glad to look into that for you.
Yes, you can get back with me, because you
sure
may
will.
not have that, but if you can just tell me if we've saved
Okay.
with hiring the company based on the employees we already had. And then the question would be also, with the employees that we once had that were actually utilizing this before the company, what are they doing? Are they still with HR helping with recruitment, or what are their new assignments? And that was probably more of a Dr. Moore question.
Okay. Are you asking about our internal personnel in HR?
Well, yes, because prior to going to this company, we had staff, and that was their responsibility, job duties, to hire guest teachers. So how are they working with ESS in this process?
So that would be Lori Lewis, the Director of Employment Services. And then
What-
she had one other person, that would have been Tanya Jones, who serves as our onboarding specialist. for
So it was
certified
only
staff.
2 people in the department? So we really downsized. Oh, wow. I remember one time we had like 6 and 7 people that were working. So, okay. So that answers my question. You guys
Okay.
need that help.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any other questions? Mrs. Porter?
In the future, when we have another report, I'd love to see our recruitment data as well. Like after implementing this, how many teachers were we able to gain through ESS?
Okay.
Because I know that will take time, but I'd love to see that in the future.
Okay, we can track that. We can track.
Yeah,
Okay.
ESS, thank you so much. We do appreciate
you.
that. Thank you. We will now move to item 10.3, 2023-2024 High School Achievement Report. Dr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is our third installment of our achievement data. I would like to ask Mrs. Jennifer Morrison, our Senior Chief Academic Officer, and Dr. Jennifer Coleman, our Executive Director of Accountability, to present to the board. J Square.
All right, so tonight, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Superintendent Moore. Tonight, Dr. Coleman and I will be sharing the high school achievement data from the 2023-24 school year. We also have a number of folks in the audience. Ms. Davis for special education, Dr. Atkinson with secondary, and Ms. Kane is also here in case in case you would like, during the discussion, have questions about some of the work that's happening in those areas to move our student achievement. So the format tonight will be a little bit different because our summative assessments at the high school level are a little bit different. And we're going to share data related to the 2024 graduation rate, end of course exams, and the South Carolina Career Readiness Assessment. So those are 3 big ones at the high school level. We're also going to we will provide the board with subgroup data, just the same way that we did with elementary and middle in board brief, separately, just to keep our presentation a little bit shorter. And then, as always, there are points of celebration. And especially with grad rate, 2 of our EOCs, and our career readiness in Richland 2. And our teachers and principals, as you know, are working hard, and we are putting together systems and strategies at the district level for continuous improvement in all of our high schools. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, and she'll talk a little bit about our grad rate.
All right, good evening. If I had my way, I would spend 7 minutes on this slide. To me, this is probably one of the most important indicators when we're looking at the success of our children, is how they move on and move out into the world through that graduation rate. And it might seem a little silly for me to be so excited about a 0.5 percentage point increase, but when I tell you that our teachers and our kids and our principals worked hard for that 0.5%, they worked hard. The graduating class of 2024 entered their first year in high school virtually. This was definitely not what any of us signed up for, and it presented unique challenges for this class of kids that other classes did not experience. So I'm incredibly proud to say that we did increase our graduation rate to 86.7%. All right, I spent enough time on that one, even though I want to spend longer. All right, so education, and of course, examination program. The reason we give this exam is that it's a mandate by the South Carolina Education Accountability Act, as well as the federal government as well. And so you're required to test in 4 benchmark categories. So there's Algebra 1, English 2, Biology, and U.S. History. For any of you that have had children in high school, this is probably one that caught your attention because the student score on the EOCEP becomes 20% of their final grade. So you can look at the 2023-24 grade distribution by EOCEP subject. So students can earn an A through an F. Now, technically, when we report out, earning a D or higher by state law is considered passing. So when we're looking at the passage rate, we're only technically looking at the reverse of the Fs. But one thing that we're striving for internally is to decrease that percent of students who are passing the exam with a D. So when you look at our Algebra 1 scores, this one's been a challenge for us. You can see that we did have a decrease over the past 2 school years, and we've not quite rebounded to where we were in 2019. When looking at biology, we did have a little bit of an increase, and we're very proud of that, especially given that we're still functioning under somewhat new biology standards, which takes quite a bit of time for not just teachers, but students to sort of make that shift. And so we're proud to see that starting to trend in the right direction. English 2, this has always kind of been our hallmark of where we do really well on this assessment, and you can see that we're now at 86.4% of our students passing this exam. U.S. History, this is a hard exam. I don't envy kids when they're having to take this one. It's been a challenge, and we did see a bit of a decrease, and we're not trending in the direction that we would like after this past year. So 2 of these EOCEPs are hallmarks in our strategic plan, which is the core math test for high school and our core English test for high school. So we have set a goal that on our strategic plan by 27-28, we'll have 82% of our students passing the Algebra 1 EOCEP. This is actually made up both of middle school students and high school students, depending on the math progression and when students take their exam. We did see a bit of a dip on this one, and this is one that we're trying to hit head on and hit hard. When we look at English 2, we're actually trending in the right direction, and if we maintain this trajectory, I would anticipate that we'll meet that goal of 67.2 prior to the end of our strategic plan.
So at the high school level, test format, when we think about the contextual factors that are really affecting our test scores at the high school level, format, like what was a problem with elementary and middle, is not really an issue at the high school level. For high schools, one of the things that we really notice is chronic absenteeism. That is a problem across all of our high schools. And so when it comes to increasing student performance, a particular contextual factor, it does affect all of our levels, but at the high school level, you can see that we have anywhere between a 14.64 to almost 30% chronic absenteeism in our student bodies. And chronic absenteeism means you've missed 18 days of school or more. And so this really does have an effect on student performance, especially at the high school level, when seat time is of issue, but it actually just really affects what are we learning actually in the class, even when you're able to do credit recovery or content recovery and all the pieces that make it happen. But please know also that over time, the culture is shifting. COVID was a really big hit when it came to just the expectation that we go to school. And so in 2021, we had about a 10.7% chronic absenteeism rate in the district, but after COVID, that doubled, and we've slowly been getting that back. And so, but it is something that the high schools are particularly addressing. It has to do with individual relationships, that understanding and education for parents, and then working on community support. But specifically, when we're talking about what we're doing to support academic improvement in our EOC classes, Dr. Atkinson has been working very hard with our high school principals to make sure that that instructional time in those courses is maximized, and that this year we have a very big focus with principals and teachers around ensuring that our Algebra 1 curriculum and instruction is on par and really meets the level that is expected in every single Algebra 1 classroom. And I think that's going to really make a difference. And we continue to support classroom instruction across the board in EOC courses, and then monitor and ensure correct data entry. That's really, really important. And in fact, with Dr. Coleman's work with schools, that was one of the things that really helped move graduation rate, because how you enter things in PowerSchool, one keystroke difference, it knocks off a whole bunch of kids. And so we also know in a lot of our high schools that our special education students who are in the regular classroom do tend to struggle. That's one of the reasons why we have those ATSI plans at the high school level. It's really speaking to that special education subgroup. And one of the things that will be long-term for the district, but that has begun over the last 2 years, is the incorporation of a co-teaching or inclusion model to make sure those special education students in the regular classroom are getting the kind of support that they need. We are also making sure that when a student is in resource classes, which is common in many, many IEPs for those students, that course is not study hall. It is about standards. It's about really supporting that student learning for the regular classroom. And then just really continuing our students who are in the high school credential program who won't necessarily be earning a diploma, that they're getting the on-the-job training and support. The teachers get that training and support, and the students have a lot of the resources that they need. I don't know if anybody got to attend the career fair that was held for our high school students who are doing their high school credential program and other special education transition students. But it was full, and it was packed, and it was exciting. So we do a lot for our special ed students. We have to figure out in the regular Tier 1 classroom, really making sure that all students are getting what they need. And so then we're going to talk a little bit about the career readiness assessment, and then we'll move to discussion. Just flip it.
Thank you, ma'am.
There you go.
So state law requires us to give high school students one college readiness assessment and one career readiness assessment. This assessment has actually had about 3 different names over the past 5 years. You've probably heard us refer to it as WIN or Work Keys. Currently, it's being called the South Carolina Career Readiness Assessment. So this is administered to students in their 3rd year of high school, and there are 4 components: math, data assessment, reading assessment, and soft skills. And we used to talk about whatever category was the platinum, gold, silver, bronze. Those were the words. They now have switched over to 1, 2, 3, or 4. We only have 2 years of data on this because it is brand new, but we did see increases in the district, and this one's really critical too. I think as we try to honor and respect the different paths that students have when they leave Richland too, this is one that actually gives them a credential to walk away with that helps them should they not choose the college path if they go straight into the workforce. So we're very proud to see those increases in there. Do you want to do this one? Okay. It's like we're co-driving.
I know. Who gets to sit in the driver's seat? So with career readiness, we know that the online career readiness curriculum and platform that's provided by the state, that works very, very well for our students, and we're continuing usage of that. But one thing that we thought the board would be very interested in knowing is that when you think about the career readiness assessment, it's not just an assessment of sort of employability or soft skills when it comes to the workplace, but there's very significant assessment on that test around communication, problem solving, critical thinking, reading. There are lots of pieces on there too that I think speak to that overall readiness for going into the workforce or into the military. And so So with that, we're going to open it up for discussion. Dr. Moore?
Thank you, Dr. Coleman and Ms. Morrison. Board will now open it up for any discussion.
Board members, are there any questions? Mrs. Porter?
Yes, I wanted to know if we could see at some point how many of the scores were from those who were in middle school and got to Algebra 1, and I think it's English 2 as well. Is it no? Just
Algebra 1.
Okay, so for Algebra 1, which ones are middle school scores out of that, what you presented? And then also, I'm curious, I know we brought this up last time, but are our new educators in secondary and our international teachers and our teachers in transition to another grade level, are they using the learning continuum to make sure that they're hitting those RIT bands to target those gaps in algebra? Is there training being provided throughout the year to ensure that they can use that to make academic decisions during the school year?
So when you're talking about the learning continuum, you're talking about MAP results, right? So I'm going to ask Dr. Atkinson to come up and just share some of the training that has been going on with our teachers related to Algebra 1.
Thank you.
Is she here? Oh, no. Oh, there she is. Okay, come on. It's good to see you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Moore. The question about Algebra 1 professional development, it's a little hard to hear back there in the corner. We, of course, are offering our 4th cohort of theory to practice. We've talked about that now for the 4th year for our teachers that are specifically teaching algebra and middle school math. That cohort is going very well. That is where we focus on the 8 best practices from the National Mathematics Council. We also, of course, are continuing with our benchmarks. If you remember last year, we brought in Texas Instruments for specific training on how to use the approved calculators within the classroom, and also focusing on Desmos, which is the online calculator they can actually use on the EOCEP. We want students to know how to use a calculator and the Desmos calculator online. We are continuing, of course, to do classroom observations, and the most important part of that process are the coaching conversations that we are having with our teachers afterwards. Of course, this will be the last year of our current algebra standards. Next year, we will have new math standards in kindergarten through 12th grade, which means we will have a new EOC as well for our high school students. So at the end of this year, it's going to be interesting to see what our scores look like, because thank goodness the state has actually made a reduction in the number of standards that we're going to be teaching in algebra, so there'll be less assessed, and algebra is actually now going to move to be the sophomore math course and not the freshman course. That is a state decision that we are being mandated to implement, but we are continuing to work with our math teachers. We are at 2 specific high schools every Tuesday, providing coaching with them, and again, doing our all-important benchmark reflections with them as well to see what needs to be retaught before we move towards the EOC.
Dr. Atkinson, would you talk about the training that was conducted on October 18th, the professional learning? Because I visited several of the sites to include the math training, and I think that would also answer part of Ms. Porter's question.
Yes, ma'am, I'll be happy to. On Friday, we had, of course, our professional development day. We normally get 2 days to focus on PD for academics. This time we had half the day with conscious discipline and half the day specifically with our content areas. We brought in Dr. Tiffany Arnold, who is the representative for Algebra and Math Nation. She did an hour session with our high school teachers, all high school teachers, because Math Nation is available for middle school, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, and that is a free resource that the state provides, and the majority of our high schools are using that. There is a very specific 10-day EOC review that our high schools did last year and will employ again this year. We also had teachers unpacking the standards for the new math progression and the new math courses that will be coming on board. So we're not waiting until the last minute to make these changes. We're going ahead and introducing it to our teachers. We work specifically with our Algebra 1 teachers at the middle school level on Friday, teaching them about more hands-on application instead of just the practice and the steps. But why do I need this? Why is it important? So it was a very engaging day for all of our teachers, actually.
And the only thing left from my list is I'm wondering about with our, and this goes with that middle school data, that if we're communicating to those families that they have the opportunity to retake the course in their freshman year if they didn't do well in Algebra 1, is that correct? That if they are in honors or accelerated, which allows them to take Algebra 1 earlier, if they're allowed to retake that class in high school if they are, falling into the D range or barely passing, which would hopefully help them pass their test or do better.
Yes, ma'am. The uniform grading policy changed several years ago. It was that if you took a high school course in the middle school, you would retake it in high school, and that was the grade that went on your transcript.
Right.
It changed several years ago. A student can opt to retake any high school credit course that they took in middle school at the high school level within that first year of high school, and they actually choose which grade will go on the transcript.
Right.
Both grades are recorded, but the one that the student scores the highest on is the one that will be actually recorded in their GPA. Where in the past, it used to be whatever you got at the high school in the high school course is what you had to take. That's not the case anymore. We do encourage students, if they fail the course, of course, they've got to retake it. We don't see a lot of that with our middle school students, however, because those are mostly our high flyers.
Board members, are there any other questions? Ms. Washington?
So thank you for sharing the plans of support for our Algebra 1. I do want to know that based on these plans that you all have, do you all have, and we talk about making sure that every student is successful. Do you all have any policy recommendations or practices that we need to put in place to make sure that we are focusing on all of our students? Have you had an opportunity to look at, because I know there are several policies listed for instruction, and I know that might be something that we will need to do as a board, but is there anything that you would recommend that we put in place? We talk about equity, we talk about ensuring that, making sure that all students get all of their needs met. Is there anything that, I know you may not be able to think of on the spot, but anything in terms of policy that you feel that we would need to pay attention to in terms of language or things that we need to put in place to support all of our students? That's one question. And then my second question is, we have a lot of positions that were not filled. We discussed that in our last meeting. What is it that you need from the board to be able to support your plans? Is it more, do we need to focus on hiring additional coaches? I love the fact that she said that they're having coaching conversations. That is very important in being able to change teachers' practices. We're going to have a discussion about our audit and funds that are left over. And, so is there anything that we can do in terms of support that you would need to help these plans and be able to see our student scores increase? And then I have one final clarity question. If a student doesn't pass the EOC, what happens?
It depends.
Okay.
Because you can theoretically fail the EOC and still pass the class. So the requirement is that they pass the class to earn the credit. So the EOC is kind of independent of that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so you don't have to get those, but I just wanted to throw those two questions out to you as the chief of academics in terms of policy recommendations for every student, ensuring that every student is successful. because those, I'm going to be honest, those policies are old. And then, and we've had standards that have changed, curriculum that has changed, and then, again, what support do you need from the board in terms of supporting your plans to make sure that we're getting students to mastery for these subject areas? Thank you.
So this is how I'm going to respond. I'm going to say that that is a perfect, inspirational, amazing 2 questions to ask. And I think we're not going to address those tonight, but they're really good things to think about. And certainly, as we plan for the 25-26 school year and really for the spring as well, all of these are considerations. And I love the fact that it is about every student being successful. And so, yes, we will give it serious consideration.
Board members, any questions? Ms. McFadden?
Ladies, thank y'all so much for this information. So I would like to discuss the strategic plan, those baselines. So on the last 4, it has TBD, which is to be determined. So is there a way that, and a board member and I were talking about this, is there a way that we can get, we have the baseline, if we can get projected and then actual under that, so we can see, well, we have 67.10, where should we be at this year, so that we can see what we need to do, so we'll know the areas
Yes,
to focus
ma'am.
on?
Yeah, so they're actually, if it's a 10 percentage point goals, it's 2 per year. If it's 15, it's 3.
Right.
But
I think it's
understand
3
what you're
this year,
saying.
yeah.
You want the visual.
Yes, so that we can
Yes, ma'am.
see where we're at.
That's
Yes,
easy
ma'am.
to do, yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much.
We can include that in the board brief, Ms. McFadden.
Board members, any other questions? If not, I just have one question for clarification. What is the math that 8th grade take? Is that Algebra 1 to
So there
get
are
high school
options at the
credit?
8th grade level, and I'm going to let Dr. Atkinson talk about those math options at the 8th grade level.
And I'm asking that question because you just indicated about the new math standards, and that as a freshman, now algebra will be for sophomores. So I'm just wondering, if you get that credit in 8th grade, then what are we doing for 9th grade? Do they just keep moving, or we pause until they're sophomores? Help us out with that.
Yes, ma'am. Currently, right now, our 8th graders are either taking 8th grade math, Algebra 1, or honors geometry. Okay, so we have 3 options in 8th grade right now. Because remember, in 6th grade, our top 5% of our 6th graders are in accelerated math, which is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standards in 1 year. Or they have 6th grade math, or they have honors 6th grade math, which is all of the 6th grade standards and first semester of 7th. Okay? Then in 7th grade, if you're in accelerated math right now, then you go into Algebra 1. And then if you're in Algebra 1 as a 7th grader, then you're in honors geometry as an 8th grader. Okay? So when the new math progression starts, we will still have accelerated math for 6th grade, 3 years of standards in 1 year. Their 7th grade year, they will take honors geometry. And then their 8th grade year, we will be looking at offering honors algebra, because once you go into an honors level math course, then you don't want to step back and go to CP. So we will be adding that course, because currently we do not offer honors algebra anywhere in the district. Okay, so if I'm on a regular track, like myself when I was in middle school, I took 6th grade math, 7th grade math, 8th grade math. As a 9th grader, next year I will take geometry, either geometry or honors geometry. And then algebra will become the 10th grade course unless you're on the accelerated track in middle school. We are also introducing, the state is introducing 2 new math courses at the high school level that are more practical and application type math courses for our students that perhaps want to go the technology or the technical school route, or want to go right into the job force. We also, as a state, are bringing back discrete math, which we have not offered as a state. So we're looking at some of our upper level courses changing as well. Probability and statistics will no longer be a specific course. It will be embedded in all of the math courses from kindergarten through high school math. And then, of course, we will have algebra. Algebra 2 will be the 3rd course at the high school level.
Thank you so much. You just answered that other question for me because I wanted to know the direction of those students who may not want to attend college. So thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Great presentation. Thank you guys so much. We will now move to item 11.0, agenda items for next meeting. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I talk about the agenda for our November meeting, I just have to say Ms. Agostini and I were visiting schools today. We were in a middle school where kids were doing wonderful math lessons, and they actually told me I was a math whiz. And I said it was because of their great instruction, and they said, no, you're a math whiz. So I just put that out there because statistics is a great course, and we should all be doing it. With that, we will move into our next regularly scheduled meeting. As of today, it would be November the 15th, pending certification of Board of the elections. The start time would be 4:30 p.m. We would start with our call to order, move to the approval of the agenda, and then release to executive session, which would include student appeals, student admission request into the district's adult education program, breach of contracts, employment recommendations and certified releases, and then release back to public session at 5:30 p.m. Making adjustment. We will then have inspirational moment and pledge of allegiance, followed by our consent agenda, which would include our standard items of approval of the consent agenda, approval of minutes from the previous meetings, and classified employment releases and in-district transfers. We would then have public participation, followed by voting on executive session items, which would include student appeals, student admission request into the district's adult education program, breach of contracts, employment recommendations and certified releases, and as needed for items discussed in executive session. We would then move to unfinished business, action requested. We will look at policy revision for policy JICJ, possession/use of electronic communication devices at schools. This would be the second reading of the policy. We would then move to new business action requested. We would have a placeholder there for new board members, and then have a draft board calendar for the 2024-2025 school year. This would be the first reading of that calendar. The goal is to publish that by January 1st. Next business, new business is next. No action requested. The board will have a discussion around the South Carolina School Board Association resolutions, update, and a financial update report. We'll then move to the draft agenda for the December 10th, 2024 regularly scheduled board meeting, and then move to our second items if needed, which would include public participation, executive session, resume back to public session, and then voting on executive session items. Conclude with board and superintendent comment.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Board members, are there any revisions or additions you would like to see made to a future agenda?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mrs. Washington.
Just because I've heard it referenced in many of our presentations regarding academics, and I don't know what the December meeting would look like, but I would like for us to talk about chronic absenteeism, discussing what is our average daily rate, looking at those rates by school, by grade, and by subpopulation, and then any updates on practices that we're doing to build capacity in our schools and with our community partners to support that. And then what are any goals that we have to improve our chronic absenteeism rates, because we know as we've heard several times, that's one of the things that is affecting our data. And so I want to make sure that we have a plan in place. I know we have people in place that have been approved by, I believe it was last year's budget and the ESSER funds. And so I just want to know, get some information to see how we are targeting that area. I just don't know what board meeting, because I don't want to put it on November. That's already packed. I don't know what December looks like. So can I ask for it for January?
Yes, that's a great ask, because we
Okay.
actually have it already planned for the
Oh.
January meeting, so you're right on point.
All right, sounds great.
Yes, that's
Thank you.
perfect. Board members, any other revisions or additions for upcoming future board meeting? Okay, if not, we're going to move to item 6.0, board and superintendent comments. We will start with Mrs. Agostini.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. As my kids and more swimmers would say, last one, fast one, but it might be a little longer tonight. First of all, I want to thank Jamie for her inspirational moment and also recognize Jordan Benjamin for her outstanding job during public participation, but also what a great representation we have of students in Richland, too. Tonight is bittersweet. For over a year now, I knew I would not seek re-election for school board. In fact, I shared that with Dr. Moore at our first meeting. While on the board, many times people have said being on the school board is a thankless job. I disagree. Repeatedly in the community and in schools, employees and constituents have expressed their gratitude and support of me and my efforts. I found that taking the time to promptly respond and, more importantly, listen and finding common ground either simmered or resolved most concerns. Quite honestly, the biggest frustration of being on the board is similar to what most of our students face: media and social media, anonymous posts, and misinformation. Today I had the opportunity, as Dr. Moore had said, we visited a couple of schools and one was Center for Achievement. I gave myself a pep talk prior to entering CFA, as CFA was instrumental to my daughter Caroline in teaching her to learn how she could learn. I felt confident I would be fine as much as the staff had changed and her teachers were all no longer there. However, just as we were about to leave, Caroline's fourth grade teacher, who retired, is now a part-time employee there. Mrs. Adams popped out of her classroom to say hello. By the end, I had her in tears too, as I shared Caroline is finishing her last year of college and was the only summer intern offered a full-time position upon graduation in the city of her choice. On that note, I'm so grateful for the opportunities and experiences offered to the Agostini kids while in Richland too. As a trustee, it has always been my hope and goal all students in the district will find their passion and develop to their fullest potential, as my children have. Thank you to those who inspired, educated, challenged, motivated, and supported the Agostini kids. Thank you to Libby Collins, Kathy Stinson, and Timothy Hicks. Thank you Stephanie Thomas, Nancy Glenn, Kristen Ugro, Rodney Grantham, Michelle Wyatt, Michelle Spigner, Laura Seiler, and Mr. Timoni. To all of you and to so many others, I say, well done. A very special thank you to two women who changed the trajectory of two of my daughter's lives, Shirley Vickery and Kim Boucher, who is my daughter Caroline's second mother. I want to acknowledge and thank former Richland 2 Board of Trustee members Susan Burrell and Craig Plank for their mentorship, support, and friendship over the years. I thank my husband, Jim, and I'm going to be honest, I texted him a couple of times saying, you can go, but he's still here. But I thank Jim and our children and my besties for their support and listening ears. Nancy Gregory, Greg Turquetta, and Andrea White, thank you for powering through and moving forward during challenging times. And a final thank you to all of you who are here tonight and all of you that are committed to the success of Richland 2 and our students. Purpose-driven, future-ready. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Agostini. Mrs. McFadden?
Okay, good evening. Let me first start by saying happy birthday to my son. Today is his birthday, and I got a text message or an email from Major Perry yesterday in the morning saying that he was going to be promoted at the commander's call tonight, so that's why I was absent, for those of you who don't know. But actually, 2 of my children got promoted, so congratulations to Liberty and Saint on their promotions tonight. So I do want to say that I have been thinking about and considering, and I even heard some information about the traffic at Hardscrabble Road. So I kind of want to address that. A few years back, we have submitted a proposal to South Carolina School Board Association. Last year, we went down there to actually have it read from the floor. What happens is that they would rather you have it in the booklet so that they have time for their board to approve it. So usually if you read something from the floor, it's not really going to get vetted properly and it may get voted down. And that's exactly what happened. Because in our district, of course, we have to have Class 3 officers. So we have resubmitted it. The board did approve it. And so now it is going to be read in a resolution that's already going to be prepared when we get down there in December. So we are literally working on it. And basically, it's just a belief statement, but those belief statements are what we use to advocate at Congress in South Carolina so that we can say, we need this. We need to be able to train our own teachers, parents, whomever wants to volunteer, or I wouldn't say volunteer because we were definitely going to pay them, find a way to get that money to them, that we need to train them ourselves so that we can have them out there because it is very dangerous. I was traveling to work one day this week, and there was a major wreck in front of one of our schools, which involved the families. And what happened was everyone in one direction and everyone in the other direction was at a dead standstill. So guess what? Everybody on that one road was late to work because they had to move both vehicles, make sure everyone was okay. So it could happen. After the wreck, we had an SRO after that. Out there, but we kind of need that beforehand. So that's what the board is working on, and it has been approved. So I just want to let parents and the community know that we're working on it. There's a lot of red tape involved with a lot of things, but you can't have parents go out there and volunteer. You can't do that. I know that some parents were volunteering to do that, but you can't do that right now. It's against the law. So we're trying to get the law changed, so bear with us. But thank you all so much for this meeting. I look forward to seeing y'all at the next one. Thank y'all so much. Have a good evening.
Mr. Trapp.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say I had some things I was going to talk about, but I think after our presentation on our guest teachers, I know I've shared this experience before, but I want to real quickly just talk about the first time that I was a substitute teacher. And I went to an elementary school because I wanted to make sure I was around people that I was smarter than, so I had to pick the elementary kids. But I did a half-day assignment. I went in there. The kids they melted my heart. I remember going out to the truck that afternoon, and I called my wife, and I said, I've got work planned tomorrow, but they don't have anybody tomorrow. Do you mind if I just substitute tomorrow, too? And she said, of course. So I went in there the next day, and, of course, the teachers, this was at BHE, and I knew half the teachers there. Walked in the next morning, and they just laughed at me because they knew what had happened. That the kids had got to me, and I looked over there, and there the kids were sitting on the bench just waving. They were so happy to know they had a teacher that day. And the reason I share that with you is because if anybody that might hear this, if you are in any position where you can take a half day off here and there, you don't have to commit to this, full days even. We have half day assignments. Go out and do this with our children. They're worth it, and if you will do that, you will find that you'll fall in love with them, and you can't help but want to be around them. I think taking care of the rising generation in our society is the most noble thing we can do. And I do construction. I'm a welder and all that, and I sometimes wonder if I wouldn't be more happy if I had went into education or something. But I think it takes more of a brain than I have anyway, so it doesn't matter. But the last thing I would like to mention, though, and I really hope, I'm looking forward Friday to being here at Boo at 2 at 4. I have to point that out to people because it's at 4, not at 2. But I really hope a lot of the staff is in costume because I'm going out on a limb here. I'm going to be in makeup for 2 hours, and for the first time in my life, I'm going to wear a wig. So I hope I'm not the only one that comes out and looks that ridiculous, but please come out. I look forward to seeing the children and giving them some sugar so they can really entertain their parents that night. But anyway, I look forward to that and hope to see everybody there. Y'all have a good evening. Thanks.
Mrs. Porter.
Thank you for our presentations today. They were very informative. And thank you to Jamie with our lesson on kindness. And also thank you for our school support that came out here for those who received awards. And for Ms. Agostini, thank you for your service. We have agreed to disagree. We have laughed, even at our own mistakes. I appreciate how thorough you are about the review of policy and Robert's Rule. Thank you for cheering me on as you recognize my growth in regards to policy. Your dedication to our students and staff of Richland 2 does not go unnoticed. Now, as you have more time on your hands, please do not watch us. I will send you great book recommendations if necessary, and I will continue doing that should I feel as though you are having too much fun watching us. All right, have a good evening.
Mrs. Nash.
Okay, so thank you, everybody, for all of the great presentations. And then I was trying to look for it. I lost it. But I saw this great article in the Wall Street Journal, and it was talking about trades, and it was talking about how trades are making the next millionaires and how companies are buying into that. And that's something that really is dear to my heart because not everybody wants to go to college. Some people want to go and be entrepreneurs and, get out here in this field, and there's much great money to be made about that. And so if you're somebody that's thinking about a trade, find that Wall Street Journal article, put it up on your wall. There is great money in plumbing. I forgot there's a guy in my BNI group who has some things that says, if you want it to flush, he has like a little saying, but it's a really good thing. So if you're thinking about trades, that's something that you want to do. Check out that Wall Street Journal article. And then lastly, I want to rouse them a little bit because I got contacts today, you guys, and these people said I couldn't do it, but it has been done. But honestly, I just kept hearing them in my head the whole time. So there is a good competitive competition, and they stir you in the right way. And so I was sitting there going, I can't leave this place without getting these contacts because these people are going to be waiting for me to come in. So thank you to the board for making me do it. Have a great night, everybody.
The question is, can you see better? No.
I can see very well.
Thank you, Mrs. Nash. Mrs. Washington?
Okay, so I'm sorry I'm going to read really fast, but I have some things to say. So it's 2 years that most of us on this board are walking into our second year of service as a Richland 2 trustee. But I want to take this time to say thank you to Ms. Agostini for your service. This is not an easy position, but you kept me in line with Robert's Rules. You even listened to me with grace, even when my voice got elevated. But I do want to say thank you for everything. Also, I want to celebrate the work of this board because we've had some highs and lows. We've had some disagreements and some agreements. We've had conference laughs. We've had camaraderie. But some things that we've been very intentional about is vocalizing our need to put our employees and our students first. We passed a budget that not only meets the needs of our students and our employees, but it supported the needs of administration. We've had various committees that have focused on priorities for Richland 2, including safety, looking at the IG report, and even our legislative committee had community members and where they were able to give input. We submitted, as Ms. McFadden said, a recommendation for something that we knew had our community in an uproar last year. But just to let you all know that we hear you and that we are doing things to advocate and champion. We are focused on accountability, hence the reason why we have several data presentations where we're asking a variety of questions around different topics. We are hanging out with our superintendent visiting schools. We're taking bus tours of attendance zones. We've been judging competitions over the past 2 years, attending lots of football games. Go Northeast. And by the way, if you have not been to Lonnie B. Nelson on Friday, you need to go to the kindergarten pre-K hallway because they have a dance party every Friday. I was able to participate in it with Dr. Moore while we also opened up card doors for students. So see, we're doing some exciting things and I'm really excited for what's coming. CFI, every Friday, I believe they have a gathering, and so I want to leave with these powerful words that some first grade students shared. These were their affirmations that they learned from their unit, and one of them says, "I am responsible for myself and my community. When things are hard, I will be brave. I build others up with my words and my actions. And so with that being said, I want to say best wishes to everyone who is running for Richland 2 School Board. I look forward to all of us taking the vision to the next level to keep our students purpose-driven and future-ready. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Washington. Dr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, October is Principal Month. So I just would like to celebrate this National Principal Month and just take a moment to recognize our great leaders. You know, as a recovering high school principal, I understand the struggles that our leaders face every single day. They are the heart of our schools and the backbone of our education system. Every day, principals, you lead with vision, compassion, Whitney is, yes, and unwavering commitment to our students, staff, and communities. Your leadership shapes the future. It is your guidance that inspires teachers, your resilience that supports staff, and your dedication that motivates students to strive for greatness. You manage challenges, solve problems, and ensure our schools are safe, inclusive, and nurturing spaces for learning and growth. So thank you for your passion, your dedication, and your leadership. We are truly fortunate to have each of you guiding our schools, and we celebrate you not just this month, but every single day. So thank you to our principals. A few more things. October is Hispanic Heritage Month, and we had our Carnaval del Barrio at R2I2 on October 12th. It was an amazing event with our partners from Latino Community Development, and throughout this event there was music and dancing and entertainment. Yes, there is video out there for you to see the dancing. We had we had flags that were displayed while music from the nations were played. Schools and international teachers worked collaboratively in small groups to design tables and displays. We did artwork, and actually that artwork will be on display next year in our lobby. I painted the sleeve of one of the arms, I'm just saying. It was really good. And so we just want to say thank you to our community and thank you to the partners that help us put that event on. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and you will see that we have been wearing pink to honor that awareness. And yes, we had a fashion show that R&E put on called Shades of Pink. And as a part of the fashion show, the survivors, including myself and Ms. Georgette Council and Dr. Helen Grant, were part of that walk. There is video, but we will not be showing that. Talk to me later. But the wonderful thing about this event is it's students who are the models, and all of the proceeds the students donate to cancer awareness. And I know our young people get criticized a lot for being self-centered and selfish, but these students are doing this for not their benefit, but for others. So thank you to R&E for that wonderful event that they put on. Want to talk about one of our fabulous teachers that is a rookie teacher on the block. So Nikoshi Ellis at Richland Northeast High School was named the October Rookie Teacher on the Block. As you are aware, each month from October to April, principals nominate their first-year teachers who they believe are standouts and who are already making an impact. There's a panel that looks at it and makes a decision. And then what will happen is the winner of the Teacher of the Block is announced at the annual Teacher of the Year banquet and receive $500 cash and tax-free preparation from HR Block. So that's a great thing. And then Mr. Trapp already mentioned this, October 25th will be our chance to celebrate Halloween early. So that's this Friday. Join us for Boo at 2. And this is our kid-friendly Halloween event filled with costumes, candy, and crafts. And so we want everyone to come out, see you here at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. right here at the district office. And Mr. Trapp, I will be in costume. They are forcing me to do this, and I will be wearing a wig with you. So you will not be the only person. And last but not least, I just want to say a thank you to Ms. Agostini for her service, for her commitment to our students. Today, they said I was a math whiz, but what I didn't tell you, and I was saving it for this moment, is we actually helped 2 different groups of students with a problem, and her student got it right. My student got it wrong. She asked me, she said, well, why did you get it wrong? I said, because I let the student go through the student's process to let him figure out that what he was doing was not right. So while I'm a math whiz, she got the problem correct. And it's been a pleasure to work with you, Ms. Agostini, and to do school visits with you. We danced, like Ms. Washington said, I danced with her. Ms. Agostini and I went into a kindergarten classroom. We thought they were on the last song. They were on the first song. There were 4 songs. And by the end of the 4th song, we didn't want to talk to the kids. We just walked out because we were tired. But I do appreciate your commitment to our students. And I truly hope that while you are leaving the board, you will still be connected to students and still bringing that joy and that commitment to our students. They definitely need that. And then last but not least, board, please stay after we adjourn to get your books from Jamie.
Thank you so much. Many of my colleagues expressed a lot that I actually had on my mind. But I first start with Ridgeview High School. Congratulations to Ridgeview High School. They celebrated their 30th anniversary. So kudos to Ridgeview High School. I was so fortunate, and people say that, you know, I'm tied to Ridgeview. I am. I used to be a school administrator over there. So I do love Ridgeview High School, just like some of these folks up here love Richland Northeast and Spring Valley. I know. So I'm that Pontiac girl, and I'm Bethel Hanbury and Ridgeview High School. So I just want to say that. I want to say thank you to everyone who presented and received awards tonight. Oh, thank you. I noticed that Dr. Super looked at me like, really, what? Thank you, Rice Creek. How can I forget Rice Creek? I was assistant principal at Rice Creek. How could I not? I saw that mean mug look, and I thought, oh my God, Rice Creek. I love you, Rice Creek. I was assistant principal there for 2 years. I'm coming to see you guys. I'm bringing treats to Rice Creek, most definitely. And just want to say, Jamie Hill, we already see that she has a bright future, a first grader who has written a book about good manners and good people. Not only is this beneficial for our kids, but many of our adults, we need to practice this. Because I think sometimes we get in the midst of everyday lives and we just forget that we need to be good people and practice good manners. And then lastly, Ms. Agostini, I must say, I remember 8 years ago when we got on this board, and I don't want to get emotional, but we sat next to each other and we were supposed to be enemies, y'all. And we became the best of friends where we could laugh together, we could cry together, we could just do things, plan things. So I just want to say, Ms. Agostini, although we have not always agreed on a lot of things, I still love you like a sister. You will always be that sister to me that we can fuss and argue and not talk, but you're a sister. We sat there and we had so much fun together. So I would never forget that. So I want to say thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your love for kids and teachers and compassion. Thank you for being a very good friend to me when I needed a good friend. You were there for me. So I just want you to know that I truly, truly, truly love you. And I respect you, although we don't agree. But you have been there. And I love you. And please continue to be. No, we spent too much time. So please continue to be an advocate for kids, because we know where your heart is. And we know you're going to get us when it comes to policy and to practice. And then you're also going to love on us. So I just want you to know that you have given me some of the best 8 years on this school board, and I will always remember that. So if I can ever do anything for you, I am a phone call away. And I just want to say to Jim, I love you too. You became a part of my family. So I just want to say thank you guys for the opportunity that we shared together for these 8 years. And let's continue that. Life is too short. And let's just love on each other, be there for each other, agree to disagree, and go to Trevinius. With that being said, they know what I mean. No! So with that being said, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move to adjourn the October 22nd, 2024 regular board meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Washington, seconded by Mrs. Nash. We would take a hand vote. All in favor? 7 in favor, 7 yes. The vote is 7 yes, 0 no. The meeting is adjourned.